Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg.
Coming to you this weekend post-Comic-Con, bringing you a little bit different kind of movie. Just slowing it down with an awesome new Western. Well, I don't know. We'll see if it's awesome. We've got a lot to talk about with this one.
Okay, I thought it was awesome, Tony. And I know that the slow was in the title, but I didn't think it was... I mean, for a Western, it seemed about pretty normal to me.
Yeah, the pacing was fine.
So... that was one thing, we're talking about Slow West. I guess we'll jump right into talking about the movie, and I'll ask you about Comic-Con later. I know you're like a post-Comic-Con zombie right now.
Yeah.
I did not get to go. Sounds like it was awesome.
One of the new friends I made from it, she runs, she's a Super Geek podcast. She was talking about how it's called con drop right after you leave a con, and you've been talking for 3 days, and then all of a sudden it's like quiet and you're alone, and you just feel weird for like 2 or 3 days afterwards. Huh. I probably shook at least 1,000 hands, it felt like, over the course of the event. Some more mysterious and weird than others.
Did you have hand sanitizer?
Yes, I did.
Like, how frequently did you apply your hand sanitizer?
Anytime I grabbed someone's hand that was a little bit sweaty or a little bit weird or a little bit just out there. Like, we had a few guys walk up and they're like, I didn't know there was any human echoes other than what I made when I fart in the shower.
What?
Yeah, I had a guy come up and say that to me, and he was all, like, sweaty and weird. He was in this, like, strange costume that seemed about 20 years age inappropriate.
Oh, well.
Yeah. No, it was fun. Like, I had a good time. It was just one of the more surreal moments whenever somebody walks up to you and tells you something like that and sweats all over you.
Listen, it takes all of the different types, Tony, to make a world.
No, it's all good. Anyway, we'll talk about Comic-Con after Slow West.
So, yeah, we're talking about Slow West. And I gotta say, I'm a little bit confused about the title. Just starting right off the bat, I don't really understand what they're trying to say with it. Am I dumb?
No, I was trying to figure it out as well, because, I guess you could say he's slowly making his way west.
Yeah, but it's never like... I mean, nobody in a Western is ever in, like, an Indy car. I mean...
Or that the West is slower to adopt
sweeping panoramas and people clopping along on horses and having, like, long, drawn-out standoffs. You know, nobody's ever in a race. And even if they are, they're on horses, which go, like, 15 miles an hour.
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe it's that the law expands slower into the West and it's less civilized.
Maybe, I was trying to think if it was a contrast to, Fast West or Slow East, or there may be some, thing that it was referencing that I hadn't heard of.
Fast West is probably Kanye's next kid.
But I just didn't get it. I love the movie, Tony. I mean, I thought it was wonderful, but I did not understand the title. I thought that, I don't know what I would have called it, but I didn't understand why they called it Slow West.
Alright, just to clarify for some things, I'm going to give a quick synopsis. Slow West...
Give a synopsis, Tony.
...is a movie about a young Scottish man who's absolutely head over heels in love with a young girl. He's kind of a higher caste, she's a commoner peasant, as his father would call her. And basically, because of a terrible accident that happens because of him, she and her father have to move out west. They're basically running from Scotland into Colorado.
Yeah, they run from Scotland to America, and then way far into America, going into the wilderness of the West.
Yep. And basically, you've got a band of bounty hunters, played by various characters, as well as Michael Fassbender, who are looking for this bounty, which is $2,000, which I think if you had modern-day bounties and $2,000, you'd probably get a fair amount of people interested. Make that 1870s money, and you get a whole lot of people interested.
Right, well, I mean, it's interesting. I don't think that this is the kind of movie you really want to dig too deep into, as far as, specific historical accuracy things, but the idea that they were able to go to a different country and place the bounty with U.S. laws, within the confines of U.S. laws... That was interesting to me a little bit. I didn't question it too much. It would have had to been
like an American dignitary or something that they had to, it would have happened to.
Right, and because it was such a highborn dude who got killed, you think that they probably had more pull, and they could have that kind of clout where they could get it done. But it was one of those things where I just kind of set off a little bit of a bell in my head where I was like, would that work? How would that, like, I don't know why. I just envisioned, like, the process of the person trying to set this bounty, having to go through, like, paperwork and courts and stuff like that. And that's not the point of the movie.
And by the time
obviously.
he got that done, they would have been over here, names changed, which was kind of weird that they kept the same names. Like, it would have been a little bit different, but that's ignoring the fact that this movie has very, very strong characters. Even though it's filmed in New Zealand, it looks a hell of a lot like Colorado. Like, I was kind of really surprised about that. The only thing that was a little bit different is some of the plant life. But, like, Southwest Colorado has a lot of that hard limestone and sandstone and just that look. So they definitely nailed the look of where it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and the look of the movie, too, in addition to looking like the West, it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, just you're looking at it like full-on widescreen, giant blue skies, clouds, like just rolling hills, everything. Every scene from this looked really pretty.
The cinematography, one of the things that blew me away was they had some night shots, Tony, and there's a couple of ways that people usually go with night. Either they go with the so dark you almost just really can't see, or they go with the lit up to a degree that doesn't seem realistic. And they hit a perfect medium on this with some of their night shots where it looked dark and yet you could see exactly what you needed to see.
Yeah, it was good shadow play there.
I could not believe... I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie, Tony. I don't think I've ever seen the darkness captured that well. That sort of...
We talked about that with Mad Max 2 weeks ago and how they captured it a little bit. This was a little bit less powerful lighting.
Well, in Mad Max it was definitely more stylized, which you see, you have seen where it's lit up and you have that kind of really dark, high blue light. And you have the contrast that, of them against... It doesn't look like real night in Mad Max. It looks good.
Yeah.
It's a nice cinematography effect, and it's artistic and fine. I'm not complaining. But this almost looked like actual dusk, where you can just barely make the person out, but you can see, well enough to know where they're at. And, I was just blown away. And then there were some shots in this movie, specifically... The shot of the mushroom.
Yeah.
I just saw that. Sometimes a shot in a movie just makes me go oh, they did that. Now look at how good that looks. And they have this, super deep focus because the mushroom's, right up next to the camera. It's a normal-sized mushroom, but it looks huge in frame. It looks
like
when you first see it, this giant mushroom. And he comes stumbling up, and he's almost smaller than it to start with because he's way far away. And then he stumbles up, and you see that it's just a mushroom that's really close to the camera, and he, leans down into frame and looks at the mushroom, thinking about eating it. That was such a great shot.
Yeah.
And this movie's full of that kind of stuff. That may have been one that was a standout thing, but...
That's probably going to be, the screen capture for this episode.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. I'll try to slap it up there as a screenshot so you guys can see what I'm talking about, and hopefully you'll watch the movie.
It's available on Amazon Prime and a lot of other pay-per-view type sources right now. It'll probably be on Netflix before too much longer.
Yeah, but again, if you can pay for it, I recommend that you pay for it because it's worth paying for.
Yeah, it's $7.
It was, I thought about it if I took my wife out to the theater... We would be sitting in the theater, we would have to buy the theater popcorn, and we would have to buy 2 tickets. So if I think about this as a theater movie, paying $7 for it, and being able to lay in our own bed and, eat our own popcorn for basically free, this is a great deal.
Yeah. It's the difference of $8 and $25.
So but in addition to all of that, Tony, in addition to the great look of the movie, in addition to the acting, which... was just spot on from everybody. I don't think there was a weak performance in this movie. The story of this and the theme that they're playing out, where this kid is this wide-eyed optimist, right, who sees the world and especially the West as this magical and, adventure-filled place.
Yeah.
And he meets up with Michael Fassbender, who's bitter and like jaded and doesn't. He's seen so much darkness in the world. He's just like, this place sucks, kid. What do you see? And that clash of viewpoints, and the movie shows it doesn't pull back from the idea that the West actually was kind of a sucky place. I mean, you see people killing each other for no reason. You see Indians being run off, their homes in the way that Indians actually were, and it doesn't shy away from that historical realism. And even people who, like, oh, this is a good guy, and then it turns out, oh, he kind of stabbed you in the back. Yeah.
Well, the consequences seemed a lot higher than most movies.
Sorry, go ahead.
The consequences for killing somebody, for trusting somebody, for all of that seems so much higher than a lot of Westerns give.
And, yes. But, in the end, it had a powerful message because I thought that it was so fascinating that this movie is saying, yes, the world is a dark place, and if you look at it with cynicism, you have reason to be cynical. You can be cynical and find good evidence that cynicism will bear out and is quote-unquote the right point of view, and yet that optimism and that wide-eyed sense of adventure can change things. Even if it's a small thing, it can make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that collision of those 2 points of view and saying, hey, yes, the world does suck. It is a crap sack. People hurt each other. People kill each other. People are just crap. But sometimes it pays to be kind of silly about it. Yeah. Not silly, that's not the right word, but to look past that and see something in people that isn't there. Because it can inspire them to be better and to do better and to change who they are. And I just love that, Tony.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely had it. Like, I might not have gone that deep into it by looking at, like, the contrast of cynicism and everything. I was a little bit more just enjoying the view, enjoying meandering through the West and all that. I blame being tired because I did watch this after Comic-Con last night. But it's definitely, like, I don't know. Even from both perspectives, you're just watching it for a movie and not for this light in the darkness, cynicism versus optimism thing. It's still a really good movie. It kind of bothers me that it did so well at like Cannes and some of these other film festivals, but never got like a theatrical release.
It had a limited theatrical release. That's the thing, right? Like, I think the sad thing is people are making great movies every day, Tony, or at least good movies. Not even great movies, but just okay movies, but you can't all fit them all in theaters. And the theaters know what sells, and a lot of times it's the big, giant, bombastic thing, or the thing with a really big name in it, which I know Michael Fassbender is a name actor, quote-unquote, but generally he's not...
actor.
What?
I don't really look at him as a big ticket-selling actor.
Right, it's not like Bruce Willis or George Clooney or... somebody like that where you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go see that. I know who that guy is.
Yeah.
You kind of know who Michael Fassbender is, but he doesn't have that same, like, I don't know how to describe it. He's not there yet. He's not on that upper A-list. Even though he's an A-list level actor, he's not one of those people that everybody thinks about. And so you don't have that name draw. You don't have a big, extravaganza of special effects or, explosions or anything, and you don't have a big name director.
Yeah.
So theaters kind of have to say...
The second biggest name was the guy that played the Hound in Game of Thrones.
Yes! I didn't recognize it at first, and my wife's like, is that the Hound? And I was like, oh yeah, it is! I'm dumb! But it was... I understand why theaters have to pick and choose and get the thing that's going to put the most butts in the seats.
Yeah. But it just makes me sad that a movie like Pitch Perfect in a day will make more than this movie ever will.
Well, the first Pitch Perfect didn't do so. You have a movie like Pitch Perfect, the first one, and it kind of did okay in theaters and then did really well in, its sort of DVD release, and people loved it and went and watched it over and over and over again, so they make the second one, and I don't begrudge Pitch Perfect its win. I haven't seen it. I can't give it a review, but it seems like people are liking it. I'm not going to crap on Pitch Perfect because I liked Slow West, Tony.
I only chose it because it's a musical that's in theater taking up space.
You and your anti-musical. Like it's got songs in it. Like they're in a singing competition, Tony. It's not a like there's a reason for the songs to be there. It's like Mad Max. It was a musical too. If you put it in that context.
Yeah, but that didn't have any bearing on the plot, and they didn't drop what they were doing and start dancing. Mad Max never once opened his mouth to yodel some crappy song to sell products.
I'm sorry, you guys. Tony is the cynic in this situation. I'm the optimist, and I'm trying to change his world by being optimistic about musicals.
Yeah, and who wins in this movie?
But I'm glad that I got you to watch this. There's some stuff that we could unpack spoiler-wise, but we don't need to go there with this.
Yeah.
There's enough in sort of the basic themes and threads that I think really you got to experience this. You need to see it. It's a beautiful movie. It's a touching movie. Man, that shootout scene. I was thinking I was wrapping up, but I got to touch on that scene where they go to the general store, right? It's in the middle of nowhere.
Probably one
and
of the
the
most
woman and the
potent
man
scenes
come in and hold them up, and they have the big shootout, and of course our two heroes get out alive, and the woman and the man are killed, and they walk out of the store, and there's those two kids standing there, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about with Consequences earlier. It's like, you knew that the people that were robbing the store weren't robbing it because they're bad people. It's because they had nothing else left.
Yeah, and that scene where Michael Fassbender is telling the woman to breathe.
Yeah.
Like when she's pointing the gun at him, and he's like, "You need to breathe. You need to." He just keeps repeating that over and over and over again. Breathe, breathe, and she's like freaking out, like pointing a gun at him. That was powerful stuff. Yeah. You guys gotta watch this movie. If you like westerns at all, or
even if you don't like westerns, this is a western that could make you like it. It's not that. Like, the western part of it doesn't draw anything else from the performances or anything. It's just, it's there and it works. It could be set in, I guess it could be set in modern days and everything. What I'm trying to say is that it's just awesome and you should watch it anyway.
Yes.
Forgive me for trailing off for 3 sentences there.
No, it's okay. That's what we do, Tony. We roll with it.
Yep. Any other thoughts? Perhaps some salt to rub in the wounds?
I mentioned that last week, but yes. There's a moment in this where salt literally gets rubbed in the wound, and it's as genius as everything else in this movie. I love that it doesn't take itself... It's weird. It has this weird balance. It takes itself very seriously in one sense, and yet in another sense, you're getting the sense that it's playful and fun and enjoying what it's doing too.
Yeah.
Where it shows you these dark consequences of, man's hatred of man and all the stuff that went on in the West, and yet it's like what we talk about a lot of times, Tony. It kind of goes back to that sort of the light and the dark, but it sort of deconstructs a thing that it ultimately ends up loving. It sort of looks at the Western and says, hey, there's some problems with this, but we can look at those problems and still love this genre.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what the last really big Western was. Like, I remember 310 to Yuma did pretty well. I'm just trying to think if there's been any since then, because I know Ed Harris did a couple. There's like a few that are indie Westerns, but I'm having trouble remembering anything that was really good or at least really big.
You're having trouble remembering any Westerns that were very big?
In the last few years.
I'm going to let you keep thinking while the viewers scream at you.
1,000 Ways to Die in the West was terrible and was not a big movie, nor was it a commercial success. Star Wars is not quite... Oh, yeah. That was probably the last one. That was like 2009, wasn't it? 2010?
No, it wasn't! I saw... No, that was not 2009.
I think I'm getting Inglourious Basterds switched with, like, the
It was certainly
dates.
after 310 to Yuma.
I guess so. But still, it's been like 3 years since there was a big Western release. But we get to see another Western with Crazy 8 coming up.
Yeah, it was in 2012. Like, it's not been that long.
It's still a good time.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, they're not coming out with the same regularity that, like, superhero films are coming out.
Yeah, but it's not doing 12 a year.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was defending myself.
I still think that if you name 310 to Yuma, you should be naming Django Unchained in there, because
especially
that was a big one.
Django was way better. 310 to Yuma wasn't bad, but Django was way better.
Yes, I remember watching 310 to Yuma, and it was the new one. I haven't seen the old one, the remake, and it was one of those movies that I'm like, I got done and I watched it, and I was like, I didn't hate that, but nothing in that stuck with me at all.
Yeah. Oh, Christian Bale.
So now you need to talk about Comic-Con, Tony. Break it down for us.
All right. So for the past 3 days, I've stood behind a table. For the most part, I did wander around a few times. I stood there and I talked with hundreds of people, some podcast fans, possibly 1,000 people. It was so much like we ended up buying like 14 pounds of merchandise to hand away that were stickers and bookmarks and things like that. And I gave several pounds of it away, like just hundreds. And it was a lot of fun being there. Like I remember the first time they opened the doors on Saturday morning, because it went Saturday, Sunday, Monday for Memorial Day. It was a little bit different. But just watching them open the doors, and they put like a little siren off letting people know that it was time to start. And like it was just this flood of humanity, and it's such a varied group of humanity. Like you've got so many people in perfect costumes, then you've got like 500 Deadpools walking around. That was probably the most prevalent costume of the entire con, was Deadpool. Just every variation of Deadpool you could think of. He was everywhere. And I don't know if that's because the costume's cheap or if it's because the character's fun to play and you can have some mischief whenever your mask is covered up. Either way, it was just this flood, and I remember not even like really realizing that 3 hours had passed after the first few minutes. Also, I saw the power of what having someone in costume does. Like I see why booth babes are so popular, because my brother was there, and he was in a
Was
Thor
your brother
outfit.
a booth babe?
He was the anti-booth babe. He was the exact opposite. He was like the booth tunk. I don't know, whatever. But there's a bunch of pictures of him online. There's going to be more in this gallery that I put up later. But he was having girls come up to him the whole time. Guys wanted to try to pick up the hammer. And, like, cleverly, he just always positioned the hammer where they were picking it up right in front of the podcast logo, so there's all these pictures of the podcast behind it. But people just nonstop, like, for a while, every 30 seconds to 2 minutes, like, he was taking another picture with a bunch of people. Like, just over and over and over again. And I've also realized that the most beautiful women in the entire world are at these cons. And they're, like, full-on just willing to wear whatever for their costumes, and it's one of the most glorious things you'll ever see. Like, you're just looking at this, like, 10 talking to you in a full, like, full Sub-Zero outfit that she handmade, and you're trying to focus on the podcast, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this girl is pretty. And, like, I start getting all fumbly with my words and trying not to be that guy. I'm like, I'm a professional. I've done this pitch 300 times. I know exactly what I'm saying, and I get it back on the rails. But it's just crazy. Like, it's wonderful. It's a good time. I love Comic-Con.
We got to work with one of those female lady cosplayers as well, because on the Monday, the third day of the Comic-Con, you had a Gamora cosplayer.
Yep.
Come and help us out a little bit.
Yeah, we had the extra pass for a little bit, and my brother's friend Diana Ariana, she was not able to go to a con before this, even though she loves to. Like, she'll just do a cosplay at home and, like, go to some movie premiere or something like that, like, for going to X-Men or various other movies. She just likes to do it at home, and she likes doing the makeup, puts it on Instagram, and just has a good time with it. So we had the pass. She didn't have anything. And overnight, she whipped up one of the better Gamora costumes I saw at the entire con. She was fully green. She was getting green on everything because you didn't have time to do the airbrushing where it works a little bit better, but it was awesome. And she didn't stick around our booth as much as she did walk around and hand out cards to everybody on the floor every time somebody wanted a picture. So that was a lot of fun to see, too. So we got to see both the booth babe and have my brother there in the Thor costume. And you know how, women at the cons will complain that people grab them, pinch them, like, catcall at them and everything?
Right.
Well, there are a lot of women that weren't very shy with my brother. Like, besides handing out numbers and things like that, like, there was a lot of groping behind the cape.
Oh.
Like, at least a few shots where, like, Black Widow, like, basically just grabbed his ass. It was just kind of funny to see.
I was thinking just, like, random, like, old ladies or whatever. I don't know why I would think that there'd be some, like, 50-year-old mom there, but, I guess some of I'm sure that there's all different types of people there, but
yeah.
I wasn't expecting, like, other cosplayers to be getting all fresh with them.
No, there were other cosplayers that were getting kind of fresh, and, like, there was just a lot going on, and it was very entertaining to see. I also noticed something interesting about Comic-Con is there are a lot of people that are disabled that go there, like more than I've seen at any other event, because I've gone to this convention center before, and there are a ton of people like in wheelchairs that are having trouble getting around and everything, and I always wondered if that was an aspect of escapism to be really into this sort of thing. I'd say about a third of them were straight up in like Xavier costumes from X-Men. I mean, that's the obvious choice if you're stuck in a wheelchair for a con.
Right.
But there were a lot of cool costumes, a lot of cool people that came up and said hi too. Like, and there was so many people. Like, I can't even get over that. Like, so many kids in perfect cosplay that their parents probably put just hours into, and they'll only be able to wear it like a couple of times before they're too big for it. It's an amazing time. Like, I know we're going to try to get you out here for this one. Last year we had that goal, but they only gave us like 10 to 12 days notice, something like that. Not exactly opportune for us to get you out from Florida for it.
Yeah, well, we're continuing to try to open up new opportunities and whatnot, so maybe in the future I'll get to go to some. I certainly would like to see. I've never been to anything like that, Tony. I thought about going to the one we have locally here, but I didn't want to drop the money on it because these things are not cheap.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the little podunk one that we have in Pensacola. I can't imagine, like, San Diego Comic-Con, I have no idea how much those tickets cost.
Yeah, I feel like this was pretty reasonable for what you're getting. Like, you can buy a 3-day pass for $50 or a 1-day pass for $35, and it's a fair amount of money per person. But compared to some of the other cons I've seen, that's nothing. Like, we were talking earlier today about the cost of going to the Mile High Horror Film Festival, and that's one that we are going to try to get you out here. We talked to the guys over there, and that's a really cool film festival, and that's like $340 to get like the 3-day pass. So
you have to watch a lot of movies in those 3 days to recoup that.
Yeah, so us getting that for free means that we can actually afford to fly you out.
I cannot wait, Tony.
Yeah.
I've never done anything like that before in my life. I'm excited.
Since you're a little bit more shy around people from what you've told me, like, the film festival's a good place to start, because there is a lot of time where you're just spent watching movies in the dark and walking around and doing that. Comic-Con is just, like, you're being the pitch guy, you're handing out free stuff, you're talking to everybody. It was a very brutal assault on someone like me, who is mostly the wallflower that'll, like, bring up conversation if somebody wants to bring it to me. So I had to be more outgoing, and a lot of these other podcasts, like, they were just recording most of the time, like, having different people come over, sit down and record, so they didn't have as much interaction with people around them. So I felt like we were just sitting there kind of shaking our asses a little bit more.
Well, I was super happy with all the reports that I heard. I was actually extra happy to hear that people reacted to the Octoshark.
Yeah, the Octoshark that's behind me in the frame.
You can see
now.
Behind Tony, he has the Octoshark poster on his wall. You can see part of it.
Yeah.
Way back from, what is it, episode 80 we came up with that?
Something like that.
We're in the 70s?
And that was just like us joking around, and then Brantley came up with a sketch, or you came up with a sketch, then Brantley improved on it. And
no, Brantley sketched the original. I did no drawing. I tried to convert Brantley's sketch into computer speak, and it didn't work out, so Jen fixed it for us.
Yeah, at Mortem Posts. We had a couple pieces of art. We always overlooked that she also did the main logo, so she had our 6-foot wide banner with the logo on there. And then, she's got this giant 5-foot Octoshark that's right behind me right now. Like, it was a pretty good display of her artwork there.
All forever thankful to everything that Jen does, and all of you people who are super cool and support us in all the various ways. It's incredible to be a part of something like this and trying to grow it, and it's very, very scary sometimes and stressful, and you think, well, am I doing it right? Who knows?
Yeah,
but
then, every once in a while you get that sinking feeling when you open an audio file. It's like, oh no. And you're like, it's going to be like, there's 4 more hours of work trying to amplify and clean up and do all this other stuff just to make sure it works. But it's ultimately rewarding, especially when you go to something like this and you actually talk with people that are passionate about podcasts, and we talk to our friends online. Like it's strange how many of like people that started out as just fans have become like actual friends that we talk to on a pretty regular basis, almost every day for a lot of you guys out there, and it's just so nice. So awesome.
Speaking of, feel free to tweet us at humanechoes.com.
Yeah, or hashtag HE Podcast.
I mean, at HE... yeah. Tweet us at HE... I'm all confused now, Tony. Tweet us at humanechoes.com. Send us emails at HE Podcast. You know, whatever.
However you guys
Send a
feel
pigeon
like
to Denver, Colorado, and it'll get to Tony eventually.
That's like an hour. I don't want to drive an hour for a pigeon. That's like...
Well, wherever you are. I don't know. The pigeon will find Tony.
Yeah.
I'm saying you send it to there, and then the pigeon flies around until you pick it up.
Send a crow.
Put a message in a balloon.
Yeah. I always find balloon messages. I very rarely find messages that are like meant for a very, very particular audience. I was on a walk the other day, and I was just curious because it looked like there was something at the end of this really long, like, drainage tunnel. So I end up walking through this drainage tunnel and find like an 8-foot-tall giant red face that's all just furious and angry. And it's like, God, what was it called? It was like Mr. Iconoclast or something like that. I was like, I don't know what you were really trying to do, but I like it.
Was it a painting or was it like an actual 3D full-on vase?
It was just a giant painting, but it was so good it looked 3D through the end of the tunnel. So like you look through this tunnel that's about 50, 60 yards long, and all you see is this giant red face.
Wait, is it a vase or a face?
Face. F-A-C-E.
Okay. I was interested in why you were describing the vase as angry, like a Ming vase. I'm like, what is, like this was Tony's getting all flowery and poetic here with his language. His red vase looked all angry and the angles and stuff, and then I thought, wait a minute. I don't think I heard him right.
I think the only angry vases we've seen were in that Jugface movie.
Yeah, that's true. They're a little bit messed up.
For some reason, I was thinking a lot about that movie the other day. It kind of stuck with me more than it should have. It's not a fantastic movie, but it was a good one.
There was some good stuff in there. Yeah. It's one of those things, you know, like we just talked about earlier, Tony. People are making decent stuff all the time, you know, and man, what a great time to be a film fan when the tools for making movies are in so many people's hands, and there's so many good ideas, and sometimes they don't hit it out of the park 100%, but you still see people trying and striving to make something cool and beautiful and interesting and say something.
Yeah. And so often on like these budgets that are unimaginably low, and they're able to pull off like actual art.
That was one thing that I don't know why I hadn't looked at it before, but I looked up the budget for Ex Machina, movie we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And for some reason, like it was something around like $15 million.
Yeah.
And that was higher than what I was thinking that it was going to be, and it just like made me a little bit mad. That it was higher than what I was like, I've been cheated. This wasn't a low budget. Of course, you know, it's a relatively low budget movie, but for what it was, it seemed like it maybe would have been made for cheaper. And I went off, my brain just kind of like did this little click over thing. I was like, what? They're trying to pull a fast one on me. Nobody ever tried to tell me it was, you know, some tiny little indie film that they made for, you know, $5. But in my mind, it was a tiny little indie film that they tried to make for $5 and somehow got.
Well,
really
it's not exactly
special
like
effects.
They were trying to make it on like a Marble Hornets budget.
Yeah, well, I didn't get quite that impression, but you know what I mean. I mean, Prior was made for $6,000.
Yeah.
Which, admittedly, that was because that dude was crazy and wouldn't let anybody else do anything on his movie. Which was sad because he had a really great idea for a movie called A Topiary, which I read the script and loved back in the day because it got released, and he said, you know, he's not going to do it. But the reason he wouldn't do it is because he wouldn't let anybody else do the computer graphics work that it would have taken to make this vision come to life.
That's strange. You'd think with enough notes you could get just about anything made.
Well, he wanted it made really cheaply, too. I mean, well, I say really cheaply, but he needed it's one of those situations where the studios were interested in the idea, but when he says to them, all right, well, I need $15 million, they're like, can you do it for less? And he's like, no, I've racked my brain trying to knock down costs as much as I can. Like, $15 million is what I need.
He needed to go all Gareth Edwards with it and just be really talented at that.
Well, I guess he could, but he did not, Tony. He made Upstream Color instead, which was an okay movie, but man, was the idea behind a topiary was crazy and interesting and weird. I would have loved to have seen that.
Maybe he'll get that back someday.
Maybe. That's one of those things, too, though, where, like, I'm always a little bit skeptical. I've said this in the past talking about, like, True Detective and things, when people are afraid to collaborate as writers, as filmmakers, or whatever, when, like, no, I'm the only one who understands my vision. I understand sort of the fear there that you're going to have it taken away from you, and that does happen, obviously. But there are other talented people out there who could bring something to the table with things like that. And
yeah. Well, I mean, as much of a perfectionist as George Lucas was with Star Wars, he still had to rely on a lot of other people getting it right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't want to criticize, like we said earlier, it takes all the different types, and that's true of artists and everything else, and you can disagree with somebody's philosophy of art, but if they're making stuff, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So.
Did you hear that they pulled the director from it, and it's probably a dead project now?
I did.
Yeah.
I was so psyched for that, man. And one of the things I just heard recently was that they were upset by the kid it's Cary Fukunaga, I think, is the director's name, was the director for True Detective, which, I mean, is, whatever you happen to think of that series, like, the cinematography was great.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to see what he did with it. But apparently the studio didn't like the kid that he had picked to play Pennywise. And having seen pictures of that kid, and it's the guy from We're the Millers, and I think a couple of other things, the young kid.
Yeah.
From that, like, he looks perfect for that role. He looks just a little bit off, and that is great for what I would expect from Pennywise.
Yeah.
But they just had their.
They just had the Tim Curry Pennywise.
We should get a big name star like Tim Curry from the other.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. I think Stephen King tweeted that the project was pretty much dead. Like, it's just, it's sad whenever something like that happens, because I was very skeptical at first, and then I started feeling better about it whenever I was reading about it. And then it's just gone. It's vapor.
Well, there's always room for new things to happen, Tony. And, as much as we like to delve into the sort of the news side of things, it doesn't matter. What matters is what gets made and what comes out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if we had been talking about all of the problems that Mad Max Fury Road had in its production, we would have been talking about it for like 5 years with reshoots and going over budget and just, headaches on that set. And now it comes out afterwards that Charlize Theron and guy who played Mad Max, whose name I'm all of a sudden forgetting, Tom Hardy, that they hated each other on the set and just were at each other's throats the whole time and all that stuff. But Mad Max comes out, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
None of that matters once you have a great movie on the screen. It all goes away.
Yep.
So maybe somebody else will take it and make it into something even better.
You gotta wonder what it's like for them to see the final product of that movie whenever it was so troubled and took so long, and then to see something that's rated so highly and so loved so far. Like, I actually had a guy that was at the booth talking about Mad Max, and, like, he started tearing up just from talking about it. Like, he was talking about, like, how it was what action was supposed to be, and everybody forgot. And everybody stopped paying attention. They thought that just because, like, Tom Cruise was on the screen, they could be forgiven for all the failings of a movie. It's just...
Well, I don't know if people forgot. Even with Mad Max, right? Like, people are gonna watch that, and they're gonna take away the wrong message. They're gonna think, well, we need to make more post-apocalyptic films. Yeah, that's why it succeeded. We need to make more films with Charlize Theron. Yeah, that's why it succeeded.
Well, I'm all for more movies with Charlize Theron.
I'm not knocking Charlize Theron or anything, but, like, people lock into, like, sort of a surface thing about a movie and say that's why it was good, instead of looking at, hey, they worked incredibly hard on this. They wrote a really good story. You know, they had incredible cinematography and all that. It's not the surface stuff that makes a movie good.
Yeah. It's also interesting hearing. Did you know that George Miller was actually an ER doctor before he was a director?
I vaguely remember that, yes.
Yeah, I was watching something on the first Mad Max today, and he was actually, he was working in the ER saving up money so that he could make the first movie. It was right after Australia could actually start making rated R movies, because before that they had a really, really harsh censor board.
Apparently they still have some of that with, video games and whatnot.
Did they ever make it so you could get GTA 5 in Australia, or is it still banned?
I don't know. Somebody in Australia, write us and ask us if you can get GTA. They probably just have, no blood and the people, fall down and take a nap or something when you shoot them.
Just little Z's instead of blood everywhere.
That would be hilarious. I want, I want, a game that's just, made so that it looks like it would be over the top, and yet it's censored with, something ridiculous, puppies raining out instead of blood.
There might be a mod for that. I was looking at some of the crazy things that they've made for GTA 5 now that it's on PC. You've got a gun that shoots cars. You've got guns that shoot kittens. All sorts of things.
People are just so inventive.
Yeah.
I love people's creativity and things people can make when they just get out of their own way.
And especially stuff like that whenever they're just putting it out there for free or for very cheap.
I did want to bring up, too, by the way, talking about getting the wrong idea of why a film works. People also do that with why a film is bad, right?
Yeah.
Let's pretend, and I don't think this is going to be the case, but let's say, for instance, that the new Fantastic Four movie is not a good movie. If it turns out to be a stinker, well, the previous two were also stinkers. So people are going to get in their mind, well, you can't make a good Fantastic Four movie. It just can't be done.
Yeah.
Because movies with the Fantastic Four in them suck. Or you can't make a good video game movie because video game movies suck. That's not the case. All right? You can make a good movie out of almost any premise. The premise is not what makes a good movie.
Yeah.
As much as it might get you excited, Zombievers or Mega Shark vs. Colossus. But I know, that's just me.
Yeah. Well, Zombievers was almost ruined by the douchey guys that they brought into it. So, it's a pretty tenuous thing. That could have been a bad movie really, really easily. Right,
but it still needed to be funny. You know, the people making it still needed to put in the work and write a good script and come up with something good. And I think that there's so much, there is that sort of initial attention grab where you look at something and be like, Zombievers, it's hilarious. But if you don't make a good movie, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Zombievers was a great movie. I know people are like, well, it didn't make a good movie. That's debatable. It's definitely in the B movie. Spoilers. But it's definitely in that sort of, area of filmmaking. But even there, you gotta do the due diligence and make as good of a film as you can. And that's always true. Superhero films aren't good because they're superhero films. They're good because people have started taking them seriously and working really hard to tell compelling, adult, important stories.
Yeah.
In a superhero film. And if you do that with a video game film, it'll work. And if you do that with a Fantastic Four film, and you do it right, it'll work. Any film that you do, quote-unquote, right, will succeed, on some level at least.
I've seen the trailers for it, and I'm not super excited. There are things that look decent, things that look okay. I'm probably going to see it when it hits a cheap theater, not, right whenever it comes out. It's kind of like Ant-Man. I sort of want to see it, but I'm not quite sold yet.
I don't have a cheap theater here, so I just got to, figure out if I'm going to see it in theaters or not.
Yeah.
I was super bummed. Some people were talking about, oh, yeah, go and see it at the second-run theater. And I was like, they still have those? They don't have it around my hot town anymore.
Yeah, there are a few things better than paying $3 to go to a movie.
I believe you, Tony. They shut down the cool theater that had, dining seats and showed films on actual film still. Oh, I still drive by there every once in a while thinking maybe somebody would reopen it and renovate and bring that back. The Silver Screen was such a great theater.
Yeah, we've got one of those here, but they had to run Kickstarters to get digital projectors. Like they
Yeah.
couldn't make it work.
And we've talked about that in the past. I don't want to belabor it, but
Yeah.
man, it just bums me out that now I've got to go in the trendy, nice, streamlined new one that has all the soft seats and they not torn up leather recliner things and.
It smells like
I'm such a
something.
hipster, Tony.
Doesn't
so
smell
hipster.
like old popcorn and like sweat.
Anyway.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Speaking of things that you're going to see in the theater, I wanted to bring up something that has been kind of annoying me a little bit. Have you... Bought my camera, Tony. Have you seen the backlash against Jurassic Park? Or Jurassic World, I should say?
No, not really. There's a lot of things I choose to kind of not focus on.
I cannot go to anything about Jurassic World and look at a single story or YouTube video or whatever without there being some comments about, like, why would they make another dinosaur? It doesn't make sense. Didn't they see the first movie and how badly it went? That rubs me the wrong way so bad. I just get so
It's like if you have the technology, of course they're going to keep retrying.
Well, okay, first of all, they address it in the trailer, but apparently, I don't want to say people are too dumb to get it, Tony, because I don't like to say that.
There are some people that are too dumb to get it, and the internet democratizes that and puts them out there with just as big a voice as anyone else.
Okay, fair enough. But what I'm saying is, they see the idea of a new dinosaur and they're like, why would you make a new one? That's crazy, you know. It's not just about the actual Jurassic Park. They're making a point about us as people, Tony, and that we will always gravitate to the newest, hottest thing. It doesn't matter that we've had iPhones 1 through 8 or whatever. When they release the iPhone 9, people are going to go and buy it. They're going to keep making new crap because people keep buying new crap.
Yep.
They're never happy with the old stuff. They get the new thing, and they're happy with it for like 2 weeks, and it's the new and the shiny and the wonderful, and they're like, oh, this is boring. And they would, if dinosaurs were here, that is what would happen. People would get bored because that is what people do. We cannot sustain that level of wonderment, so to keep, the attendance up, just like everybody else, they would keep bringing new things and bringing new exhibits, and they would eventually make a new dinosaur.
Yeah.
And and plus, on the positive side, the idea that we would stop doing something because it failed one time? I mean, have you heard of Chernobyl? I mean, I realize that people are a lot more careful about nuclear reactors now, but there's still many, many people who say, hey, we need to be doing more nuclear. If we had the attitude that everybody seems like we should have about Jurassic Park and a bunch of lizards running around killing like 10 people at best in the first movie, I mean, we would just never do anything.
Yeah.
Like, well, that steam engine blew up and killed some people. We better not make no more steam engines. Let's just go back to burning coal.
Yeah, Edison's light bulb took hundreds of different attempts and tries.
Yeah, I don't think the light bulb killed anybody, Tony, but...
maybe there's a horror story in that.
Killer light bulb coming to the theater near you.
I can see Stephen King anthropomorphizing some sort of light bulb.
Do what? Nothing.
It was dumb.
Okay. Killer light bulb movie, Tony. That's what we should make. That's our first little short film. Light bulb killers from Planet Bob.
Yeah, you just see like the guy that's like working the machine that makes the glass. He just like falls in, and his blood gets into the glass, and they make him anyway. So the bulbs are slightly red hued, and it's a ghost story wherever he goes.
And then like when the people die, like the bulbs bleed.
Yeah. Just
yeah. There we go. Thomas Edison comes back and has to fight him. Zombie Thomas Edison versus light bulbs. Versus ghost light bulbs. Ba-bam!
How's he going to invent his way out of this one?
Like Tesla shows up and he's like, I have my revenge! We're coming up with... This is gold, Tony. Forget about Zombievers. Killer light bulb movie. Instant classic. But yeah, it just
This
bugs
is why
me.
we're not in the movie industry yet.
It bugs me that people don't get the Jurassic Park thing. And they say, I don't know. I just think that they're skeptical about the remake, which is fine. It may be a crappy movie, but I think that the idea behind it is actually very important and compelling that, you know, we just don't stop getting bored with the awesome stuff around us. So, we've talked about that in the past, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions tonight, Tony?
We do have one question from the
awesome.
ever
Lay it on
powerful
me.
Hannah Elizabeth Newell. I almost messed that up. All right, Hannah asks, you become a ghost in the internet and can secretly haunt and modify one website for all eternity. What site do you haunt? And if it's Reddit, you can only pick one subreddit.
Man. For all of eternity?
Yeah.
Here's what I would worry about, Tony. I would worry about picking a website and then, I mean, it goes away. Right?
Yeah, just like vanishes one day.
Like, there's no
AOL.
guarantee that 5 years from now Reddit is going to... I mean, it may still be around, but there's no guarantee that there's going to be a lot of people using it, because the internet's a fickle thing. You know, Twitter's the same way.
Remember, like, Dig was the biggest thing in the world for a while?
Right, yeah. I went on Dig a couple times. That wasn't a big... That was sort of back before I was a big internet user.
Yeah, but that, like, when people talked about, like, oh, our site went viral, it was because of Dig back in the day, and it wasn't near the numbers that Reddit put out. But it was kind of the same premise of, like, upvoting content.
Yeah.
And so that site's just, like, mostly abandoned. People aren't going to Yahoo to do searches very often anymore. They're just... It's a landing page because they forgot to uncheck a box somewhere on, like, an installer.
So I guess the real question is, if it's for all of eternity, what website is going to be around for all of eternity for you to actually be able to haunt?
Youporn.com. And that way you could really scare people when they're most vulnerable.
As sad to say, you may be right. I was going to say Google, Tony. I feel like Google has some good legs.
Yeah, Google's got some good legs, and you would be on so many machines. You could just... Like, it would start out, like, you're getting your power, and you just slightly misspell people's searches. And then, like, eventually you just start haunting them and, like, taking them to weird places whenever they type something in. They think their entire computer's haunted, just wipe it clean.
You have, like, a rival ghost that's in Bing, and he's all, like, mad because he doesn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
Bing. I remember there was a Stephen King short story where somebody used Bing. I think it was Big Driver.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly thinking, they had to have paid him to put that in there. That's the only way that they... But then I thought, well, maybe he's just old and he bought into all the commercials and, like, he actually uses
sure
Bing unironically. Like, this is great. Love Bing. I don't know.
If someone offered you, let's say, like, you had a big book coming out, like, about $5,000 to put a Bing reference in there, would you?
I mean, it depends. So, if I'm Stephen King, I don't know if 5,000's enough.
Let's say that this is a few years from now, you've had your agent for a while, this is your first major book launch. And you're looking at like a $50,000 advance that you've got to pay off, things are going well, there's talk of movie options. Do you do that for $5,000?
It depends what the reference is. Like, I will do almost anything for money, Tony. You know, like, it's not about me having some kind of higher, you know, standard. But if it, like, it would need to be in a way that wouldn't take people out of the story.
Yeah.
One of my problems with Big Driver was I was, like, reading that she was using Bing was just like, what? Why? Why?
Yeah, like,
Bing?
if you're being told that you have to put it in there, you can't just have it be like, you have a hacker character that's pissed off at somebody for using Bing like I do whenever I see people use it.
Yeah, so I would like to take the money, but it would need to be sort of something that wouldn't take people out of the story, I guess. Or maybe I would just take the money and they could deal with it.
Yeah.
Because they already paid for the book.
And then you could, like, just see how many times it gets mentioned in reviews.
I've never looked at reviews. I don't know if anybody else was bothered. I'm assuming somebody else was bothered by that, but I never heard anybody talk about it. Because, you know, nobody reads short stories anymore. nobody, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's not a...
I was about to be like, yeah, we kind of have a site based around the fact that people like to read short stories.
Some people do, but I'm saying, like, the mass reading public isn't going out and buying anthologies, unless it's by somebody named Stephen King. Because his anthologies are still, if you have it, basically if it has his name on it, it can sell.
Yeah, or like a Gaiman or something like that.
Even Neil Gaiman, I bet, doesn't do real well on those.
Yeah, it's more of just a place to put it all, I think.
You heard about the script for Quentin Tarantino's new movie getting leaked back in the day, right?
Yeah, and then he kind of tore it up and restarted, didn't he?
I don't know if he tore it up completely. I think he said he was going to rework some stuff. But did you ever read it?
I did not.
I'm not condoning reading leaked material here, okay? And if you're mad at me because I did, I understand. But I read it, Tony. Not the whole thing, but I started reading it because I was interested. Mostly I was interested in seeing how somebody like Quentin Tarantino writes.
Yeah.
And what kinds of things he puts on the page.
Yeah, just a peek into the process.
Sort of, I guess, not because I want to write exactly the same way, but it just fascinates me, how someone like that approaches it. Because he writes great dialogue, but it doesn't seem like you'd want to read a novel by him.
Yeah.
But I read, this is on the very first page of his, all of these lines are from the first page, and I thought it was a little bit funny, Tony. I'm gonna read you some stuff. This is from the Hateful Eight script, page 1. A breathtaking 70mm filmed, as is the whole movie, snow-covered mountain range. Then in the bottom left of this 70mm super cinemascope frame, we see a stagecoach being pulled by a team of 6 horses. Now, still in super cinemascope 70mm filmed gloriness, we follow along with the lone stagecoach driver, fighting and guiding these 6 horses to shelter. 70mm close-up of the stagecoach driver Obi, pronounced Obi, as he whips the horses forward, keeps the wheels on the road, and avoids the rocks. Tony!
I think he was trying to tell the studio something.
I feel like he's going to film this in 70mm film. I just, that was it doesn't keep going through the whole script like that, but just, seeing, 4 or 5 references on the first page to 70mm film, guys, how about this 70mm film, huh?
I'd love to see that.
Hopefully you will get to, Tony. Of the things he is changing in the script, I think the super giant CinemaScope 70mm film is one that he's going to keep.
Yeah.
His film stock is bigger than your film stock, Tony.
I can't even imagine how many trays that would take up and just how big it would be.
It's huge, too, because you think about, 70 versus 35mm as, it's not double, Tony.
It's quadruple.
It's quadruple, right, because we're talking about area. So it's the squared size, and it's so much bigger and takes up so much. I mean, just imagine the people who have to lug those cameras around and put them on tracks and stuff with all that film and how little film they can probably hold because of, how big it is.
Probably a lot more safety people on the set telling people how to lift.
Probably. Everybody with, those special back reinforcing things and whatnot.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. I understand that he's got his thing for film, but holy crap, I'm so happy that digital's a thing that we can do if we want to.
Because, you could have just hours and hours, and it weighs a gram. Or 3 grams, however much a memory card weighs. Actually,
and I understand that there is a very compelling argument for, specific colors and things things that film does better, but it's, for the average moviegoer, or even sort of the film lovers, it seems like just pointless to quibble over such tiny details with how much extra it costs nowadays to do film and how much easier it is to do digital and the amount, the performances you can get and the things that you can do that you couldn't do with the larger format.
And it's not like it's not going to be digital whenever they put it out anyway.
That's true.
Like,
yeah,
they're not going to be editing it the old way in, like, a chopping studio and putting it all together like that.
Quentin Tarantino might.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that dude, as a super hipster, I can say, that dude's a super hipster. So, it's possible that he's going on, like,
hipster.
But nobody else is, for sure. Even Christopher Nolan's editing on a computer, and even though he's super into film.
That was a cosplay that you would have really liked. There was a kid rolling around, like, on rollerblades, basically doing that, the robot from Interstellar.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just probably like a 10-year-old kid, like, not very big, just, like, rolling around, and he was TARS, or whatever it was called.
Yeah, TARS.
Yeah, that was awesome. Being that was,
How
like, the main character that
rollerblades
you
work
liked it.
with the...
Just because it glided a lot better, so he could actually, like, move the arms and everything. It was kind of interesting to see.
Okay.
It was odd.
Yeah, if you took a picture, I'd love to see a picture, but...
The oddest one was this, like, 17-foot-tall Quetzalcoatlsaurus thing that somebody made. Where they were on
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I got a bunch of pictures of that one. And, like, you could just see it walking around the floor from almost anywhere because it was taller than all the booths. So, like, you just see this giant bird, like, the part in Mad Max where they're in the watery area and there's people on 4 stilts?
Right.
He did it like that, except for the head and body, it was all like a giant pterodactyl thing extending out from that.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like some furniture company that made it, and, like, they had the head drop down and you could grab cards from a gift basket. I'm like, as much as I don't, like... I can't really be mad at you for promoting something because you did it so awesome. That's just weird. I don't think furniture company. Whenever
like all of the nerds from Comic-Con, like 18-year-olds living in their mom's, I say 18-year-olds, probably 20 and 25-year-olds living in their mom's. You know what? No, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. It's cool to be whatever kind of nerds you are, and definitely people. I'm sure there are those people, but I'm not knocking people who go to Comic-Con. Everybody's. You said there's people with kids there and stuff, so
yeah,
maybe it's a great place to
moms,
advertise your furniture.
If you want to go pick up single moms, Comic-Con is the place to be.
Is it?
Yes. You see so many just pretty moms running around with like a 3-year-old kid and no wedding ring on. I imagine if that's your thing, that's where you go.
It seems like that's where you go if anything is your thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you have a thing, they have that thing.
Yeah. Pretty much, like, especially walking through and seeing some of the art. There is every type of art you can imagine. Sometimes you're seeing, like, just really dark, really cool portrayals of your favorite comic book heroes. Then there's new ones. Then you look around the corner, and it's like a gay anime booth, and they've got a bunch of stuff, so it's all censored, and then you kind of shuffle past that. And then you're into, like, My Little Pony stuff, and it's just everything you can imagine.
Well, with that, I think we will wrap up, Tony.
All right.
We are at time, and I know that you're tired. I'm sure you're sick of talking at this point.
Yeah, my voice held up better than I thought it would. After the first day, I thought it was going to go bad, but I started taking better care of it, just more water and everything. Anyway, go to humanechoes.com. You guys know the drill. We've got the donate button over there. If you think that this is worth $1, if the show is worth $1, like, if you want to subscribe to it, we have all those links there. Could be $5, could be $10, could be $1 a month. Every little bit helps to keep this thing running, to sending us to cons, to doing really cool stuff. We also have the writersarena.com, lots of stories over there, so be sure to check that out. And every week now we're running a little bit of a rundown post as well as our discussion post, and just more content is coming up there, so be sure to check it out.
Yeah, and next week we will be talking about Starry Eyes, which is another indie horror film, keeping with our little hipster indie thing that we have had going recently, Tony.
Yep.
And me and Brantley actually talked about the description of this in one of our Reading Redbox things that we put out. And it was one of those where we read it and we were kind of like making fun of it, but then we got like, this actually sounds kind of interesting. And it did turn out to be very interesting. I watched it because it ended up on Netflix last week. So if you want to watch it with us, you can hit Netflix and check out Starry Eyes. Interesting take on Hollywood and horror and what people will do to succeed. And really good performances in that as well. Go check it out. We'll be talking about that next week. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you later.
See you guys. Bye.